Hello, everyone. Welcome to Enigma of the Unknown, the channel that brings you the most mysterious and terrifying stories. Tonight is a special night, Halloween, a night of mysteries and creatures beyond our imagination. Among them is a frightening legend of a half-man, half-dog creature, the Dogman. Tales of the Dogman revolve around darkness, fear, and those deadly, glowing red eyes. Let's dive into the chilling stories of encounters with the Dogman that continue to haunt many to this day. Do you have the courage to explore? First story. Quote, Dogman, the Michigan Darkness. On Halloween night in 1887, all of Michigan was shrouded in an eerie silence. The people there were well acquainted with the chilly autumn nights when the sky darkened and the old forest sank into slumber. But something about this night was strange. Everything was so quiet, so unnaturally still. Stories circulated about a mysterious creature, a beast with the body of a man yet the face of a wolf, shaggy black fur, and eyes glowing red like smoldering embers. The tale of the Dogman wasn't new, but few had the courage to confront it. Hunters claimed that the creature would appear on dark nights when the moon was hidden behind thick clouds, carrying with it a strange, echoing howl from deep within the forest. Thomas, a seasoned hunter and one of the few in town who didn't believe in superstitions, decided it was time to end the rumors. He told everyone that there was no such thing as a Dogman, that all they heard was just the wind and the ordinary sounds of the night forest. But deep down, Thomas knew he was also trying to convince himself. And as proof of his bravery, on that Halloween night, while everyone was locked indoors, he prepared to head into the woods with nothing but a gun and a faintly glowing oil lamp. The forest greeted him with an unnatural quiet. The insects had stopped chirping, and even the trees had ceased to rustle. A cold wind blew past, sending a chill down Thomas's spine. He stepped into the forest, each footfall sinking into the layer of dry leaves beneath, producing soft rustling sounds that mimicked a heartbeat. Though he kept reminding himself it was all nonsense, he couldn't shake the feeling that something strange, something terrifying, was watching him from the darkness. He ventured deeper into the woods, feeling as though an invisible gaze followed his every step. The bare branches stretched out like ghostly hands, and the knotted tree trunks seemed to smirk in the dim light. Occasionally, he heard strange noises, like distant howls. Once again, he assured himself it was just the wind sweeping through the leaves. But unease still settled in his heart. After about an hour of walking deeper into the forest, he stopped, noticing large footprints on the ground. The footprints were so deep and massive, absurdly out of proportion, unlike any creature he had ever seen. His sense of unease became undeniable as he looked up and spotted a dark figure lurking among the trees. Eyes glowing red, the Dogman stood there, tall and muscular, with the body of a man but the savage face of a wolf. Its red eyes glowed in the darkness, emanating a chilling aura of death. It stared directly at Thomas without a hint of fear, as if it had been waiting for him all along. Thomas froze, his eyes widening as the oil lamp illuminated the monstrous face. Black, shaggy fur covered its entire body, and sharp teeth gleamed as it opened its mouth, letting out a low growl, like the wind whispering over rocky cliffs. Thomas took a step back, unable to tear his gaze away from the Dogman's red eyes. The creature didn't advance or retreat. It simply stood there, observing him, and Thomas felt death looming in every passing moment. Those glowing red eyes seemed to pierce through his soul, squeezing out every thought and making him feel small and weak in its world. Finally, the Dogman began to move closer. Heavy footsteps echoed as if the ground shook under its weight. Thomas knew he couldn't escape, but his survival instinct drove him to pull out his gun, hands trembling as he aimed and pulled the trigger. The shot shattered the night, but when the smoke cleared, the Dogman was still there, unaffected, its gaze unchanged, cold and indifferent. Thomas felt his legs freeze, drained of any strength to flee. The Dogman now stood only a few steps away, its red eyes still fixed upon him. And then, in that horrifying moment, the Dogman turned and silently walked back into the darkness, leaving Thomas rooted in place, haunted by those glowing red eyes. Thomas staggered back to the village, unable to describe what he had witnessed. The villagers only saw him return with a pale face and frightened eyes. And no one dared enter the forest again. The story of the Dogman spread everywhere, becoming both a haunting tale and a warning to those bold enough to challenge the darkness on Halloween night. Next story 2. Quote, Dogman, Wisconsin's haunting. Bill and Sarah were on their way home from a Halloween party in the suburbs of Wisconsin. The night was pitch black, with dense trees lighting the road, making it impossible for the pale moonlight to penetrate through. The car glided in silence, the steady hum of the engine breaking the deathly quiet of the deep forest. Their route home was desolate, far from the warm lights of town, and the surrounding scenery resembled a horror painting cloaked in thick fog. Sarah gazed out the window, her eyes filled with worry. Bill, I don't like this feeling. This road, it's too quiet. Bill tried to laugh it off, but he couldn't deny he felt that something was wrong. It's just Halloween, love. People are probably indoors avoiding all the pranksters out there. The car sped through the darkness, but the tension clung to them. Then suddenly, the headlights illuminated a large figure standing in the middle of the road. Bill's heart skipped a beat as he slammed on the brakes, bringing the car to a screeching halt. Through the mist, under the dim lights, they saw it. A creature stood towering before the car, over 7 feet tall, covered in thick black fur. Its eyes, 2 blazing red orbs, stared straight at them with a ruthless, icy gaze. Bill and Sarah froze, paralyzed under the creature's stare. Its head and face resembled a wolf, with a long snout and pointed ears. Yet it stood on 2 legs like a human. It didn't move, just stood there, watching them with something that felt like waiting. Bill, what is that? Sarah whispered, her voice trembling, nearly caught in her throat. I don't know. Bill was just as stunned, but he tried to keep calm, his eyes never leaving the creature. He knew he had to do something, but fear had taken over, his hands unable to control the steering wheel. Maybe it's a large animal. But just then, the creature stepped forward, its wolf-like head tilting to one side as if trying to understand them. Then it opened its mouth, revealing sharp, gleaming white teeth against the dark fur. It let out a deep growl, like a warning, reverberating through the eerie silence. Sarah clutched Bill's hand, her eyes wide with terror. We have to get out of here. Bill, now. Bill took a deep breath, shifted the car into reverse, and floored the gas pedal. The car jerked backward, but the creature remained still, its eyes fixed on them as if etching their images into its memory. Finally, when they had backed up far enough, Bill shifted gears and sped forward, leaving the terrifying figure behind. In the rearview mirror, he could still see its red eyes blazing in the darkness like haunting lanterns. After driving a safe distance, neither Bill nor Sarah dared to look back. They remained silent, their faces still pale with fear. Sarah finally whispered, her voice almost unrecognizable. Bill, do you think that was the Dogman? Bill didn't answer immediately. He'd heard stories, tales of a mysterious creature that appeared in the woods of Wisconsin every Halloween, with glowing red eyes and a human-like form. But he'd never believed them, until tonight. I don't know, maybe, he murmured, his voice low and full of bewilderment. But one thing I know for sure, we're never driving this road at night again. They arrived home, but neither of them slept a wink that night. Every time they closed their eyes, the red eyes of the Dogman reappeared, haunting them. Bill and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they'd awakened something dark and dangerous. Something not of this world. They didn't know that from that moment on, Dogman had imprinted itself in their memories. A terrifying reminder that there are things humans should never confront. The next morning, as sunlight blanketed the town, they tried to shake off their fear by telling the story to friends. But no one believed them. Everyone thought it was just a Halloween prank, a spooky story meant to scare. But Bill and Sarah knew exactly what they'd seen, and that those red eyes of the Dogman would never fade from their minds. Since that night, they never returned to that road, and every Halloween, they would look out the window, wondering where Dogman was, and if it was silently watching them in the darkness, waiting for another chance to appear and spread fear once more to those who dared trespass its domain. Third story. Dogman in the Appalachian Forest. The dark, still forests of the Appalachian Mountains are places where all light seems to be swallowed by the thick shadows cast by the trees. This forest was no ordinary place, or so the locals would often whisper. And for a group of adventure-loving city youth, this place was the perfect destination for Halloween night. They wanted to test their courage and experience the terrifying stories about a strange creature called Dogman, a half-human, half-beast figure that, according to rumors, only appeared when darkness fully engulfed the land, especially on Halloween nights. That year, the group consisted of 4 friends, Jake, Tom, Ashley, and Laura, who decided they would spend a night camping in the Appalachian forest. They drove from town deep into the woods, bringing tents, food, and an unshakable confidence that they could face anything. Whether real or mythical, folktales had never scared them, and the thought of encountering a mysterious creature only made them more excited. "Hey, what if this creature actually exists?" Ashley giggled as the car turned onto the gravel path leading into the forest. Jake, who was driving, shrugged. "If it's really here, then we'll be the first to witness and record it. Maybe we'll be famous." Tom, seated in the back, laughed out loud. "Famous for a half-man, half-beast? Sure, but I bet it's just a story to scare kids." Laura, the quietest of the group, said nothing, but deep down, she felt a strange unease. From the moment they began the trip, something didn't feel right to her. As twilight faded, darkness quickly engulfed the Appalachian forest. They set up camp in a clearing surrounded by towering ancient trees, lit a big fire, and began sharing ghost stories. The Halloween atmosphere grew even colder under the flickering firelight and the faint sounds of the forest. The rustling leaves and the calls of insects in the darkness formed an eerie symphony, as if the entire forest was watching them. As the night wore on, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. The fire began to die down, and their ghost stories faded, replaced by an unnatural silence. Laura was the first to notice something was off. "Do you guys hear that?" she whispered, as if afraid to break the terrifying silence of the night. Tom scoffed, making a goofy face. "Hear what? Dogman coming to get us?" But just as he said that, a low growl echoed from afar, resonating from deep within the forest. It wasn't a sound they'd ever heard before. It wasn't a bear, nor was it a wolf. It was an angry, dark sound, as if it came from another world, a world of shadows and nightmares. Jake switched on his flashlight, aiming it toward the source of the noise. But there was nothing there but the blackness of the deep forest. "Probably just an echo," he said, trying to hide his fear. But deep down, he knew that no one in the group believed his explanation. When the growl faded, the air grew even more tense. They decided to retreat to their tent, but everyone felt as though eyes were watching them from the darkness. None of them could sleep, and the eerie silence of the forest only intensified their fear. Suddenly, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared in the darkness, just a few meters from their tent. Those eyes burned bright, like 2 torches from hell piercing into them, bringing an icy sense of death. Jake sat up, trying to check again, but his flashlight shook in his trembling hands, unable to reach those glowing red eyes. The creature didn't move, it just stood there, staring at them, as if it was sizing up each of them. Ashley screamed and tried to dash outside, but Jake pulled her back, signaling for everyone to stay quiet. "If that's really Dogman, we shouldn't make it angry," he whispered, his voice shaking. "Maybe it just wants to scare us." But then, the creature began to move toward them. Heavy, deliberate steps, each footfall making a sound like stones grinding against the ground. Those blazing red eyes drew closer, and in the weak beam of Jake's flashlight, they saw a massive figure covered in thick black fur, standing upright like a man but with the face of a wolf. Its mouth opened, revealing sharp teeth, and it let out a low growl, like a final warning. Unable to endure the fear any longer, Laura screamed and bolted out of the tent, sprinting into the forest. Jake, Tom, and Ashley quickly followed, no longer thinking about their gear or staying calm. They ran for their lives, with only one goal: to get out of there as quickly as possible. They didn't know how long they ran, only that the red eyes of Dogman continued to follow them in the darkness. Never once looking away, the growls echoed behind them, as if the creature was toying with them, waiting for the last moment to snatch its prey. When they finally made it back to town, the group was exhausted and terrified. None of them could explain what had happened in the Appalachian forest that night, but they were certain they had encountered something not of this world. The red eyes of Dogman haunted their minds, a terrifying reminder that some places in the forest should never be disturbed, especially on Halloween night. Since that night, None of them ever returned to the Appalachian forest. Stories of Dogman continued to spread, becoming a legend and a chilling warning to anyone with the notion of exploring that place. Fourth story. Dogman at Loon Lake. Loon Lake, a small lake nestled in the dense forests of Minnesota, is known for its pitch-black waters and an eerie solitude. Locals seldom dare to venture there on chilly autumn nights, especially around Halloween. They speak of a massive shadow lurking among the trees surrounding the lake, a half-human, half-beast creature with glowing red eyes and heavy, terrifying breaths. It's believed to be the Dogman, a man cursed to roam the lake endlessly, haunting those who dare trespass. That year, Mike, a thrill-seeking young man, decided to go to Loon Lake with his friends on Halloween night to prove it was all just made-up nonsense. "These monster stories are just for scaring kids," Mike said with a confident grin. Despite the wary looks from his friends, Mike and his 3 friends, Jake, Sarah, and Lisa, set up camp by the lake. They brought flashlights, tents, some snacks, and a few beers to set the mood. Determined to spend Halloween night their way, they brushed off the legends of Dogman. As the last light of day faded, darkness quickly settled over the lake. The surroundings grew strangely quiet, and the usual sounds of the forest faded away, leaving an uneasy feeling creeping over each of them. The flickering campfire cast shadows on their faces, and they mentioned the story of Dogman to add a bit more thrill. They say he was cursed because he broke some kind of pact with the devil, Jake said, his voice hoarse in the chilly night air. And ever since, he's been more beast than man, forever wandering around Loon Lake, hungry for blood. Sarah shuddered but tried to seem brave. "It's just a bunch of folklore to scare people," she said, though her voice betrayed a hint of fear. Suddenly, a sound echoed from afar, carrying over the still surface of the lake. It wasn't the usual noise of the forest, but a deep, raspy sound like the heavy breathing of someone very close. The group went silent, their faces tense. Mike laughed to dispel the tension, but his laughter quickly died as his flashlight revealed a dark shadow looming among the trees. Red eyes appeared in the darkness, reflecting the flashlight's beam, glowing ominously. The group froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. Standing before them was a tall figure, covered in shaggy black fur, with the body of a man but the head of a wolf. Its ears pricked and sharp teeth glinting under the light. Dogman stood motionless, staring at them, as if sizing each one up. Sarah tried not to scream, but her labored breaths betrayed her fear. "We need to get out of here," she whispered, her eyes glued to the terrifying creature before them. Dogman remained there, his red eyes never leaving them. Then, like a living nightmare, he let out a deep, rumbling growl that echoed through the forest, freezing the group in place. Even Mike, who had always been bold, couldn't maintain his composure. He took a step back, pulling the group with him, but their feet felt anchored to the ground. The creature took a step forward, each of its heavy footfalls seeming to make the ground tremble. Its red eyes stayed fixed on them, as though it wanted to imprint each of their faces into its memory. Then, without warning, Dogman turned and vanished into the darkness, leaving the group with pounding hearts and ragged breaths. No one dared move, their eyes fixed on the deep shadows. Mike was the first to regain a bit of courage and signaled for everyone to leave immediately. Nobody objected. They quickly gathered their belongings and left Loon Lake without looking back. The next morning, they recounted their experience, but no one believed them. People merely laughed, dismissing it as a tall tale to frighten the faint-hearted. However, each member of the group knew that what they had seen was no illusion. Dogman still lingered in the shadows of Loon Lake, waiting for anyone brave enough to trespass on his domain on Halloween night. And so, we've journeyed through the chilling tales of encounters with the Dogman on Halloween night. Whether you believe it or not, the witnesses are certain of what they saw, and the shadow of the Dogman still lurks somewhere in the darkness. This Halloween, if you're out alone in the dark, keep an eye on your surroundings. Who knows, Dogman might be watching your every step. Thank you for watching till the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next mysterious stories. Until next time, and may you have a truly haunting Halloween night.